جناب محترم بارنسپات، نماینده پاس و رئیس نمایندگی دفتر سازمان بین‌المللی مهاجرت در کابل، آقای نایب ریاضت، خانم‌ها و آقایان، نخست اجازه دهید تا از مؤسسه محترم امداد و انکشاف و دفتر سازمان بین‌المللی مهاجرت در کابل برای برگزاری و میزبانی جلسه عمومی سپاسگزاری نمایم. طوری که بهتر می‌دانند، قاچاق انسان نقض حقوق بشری اشخاص متضرر برای رسیدن به اهداف مختلف میباشد. قاچاق انسان یکی از چالش‌های عمده دولت جمهوری اسلامی افغانستان بوده و میلیون‌ها افغان به علت ناامنی، فقر، محرومیت اجتماعی، مشکلات اقتصادی، کار، خشونت، قدرت و غیره دست به مهاجرت‌های نامنظم زده و اکثر قربانی قاچاق انسان می‌گردند. یکی از عوامل عمده قاچاق انسان عدم آگاهی از موضوع قاچاق و قاچاقبران بوده و بیشترین افراد حتی نمی‌دانند که قربانی قاچاق انسان گردیدند. بزرگترین عامل قاچاق و ترافیک انسان بیخبری مهاجرین از خطرات مهاجرت‌های نامنظم بوده. مهاجرین به علت عدم آگاهی قبلی دست به مهاجرت‌ها زدند و درگیر عواقب آن می‌گردند. قاچاقبران به آسانی می توانند که اسناد هویت مهاجرین را نزد خود نگه داشته و آنها را تهدید نمایند. مهاجرین به خاطر ترس از اخراج شدن از کشورهای میزبان نفوذی خواهشات قاچاقبران را قبول می نمایند. در میان قربانیان قاچاق و ترافیک انسان بیشترینشان زنان و اطفال هستند که از آنها برای بهره برداری جنسی و کار استفاده صورت می‌گیرد. قاچاق انسان یکی از جرایم علیه بشریت بوده که با آن باید مبارزه نمود. وزارت امور خارجه در جلسات ملی و بین المللی همواره پدیده قاچاق انسان را محکوم نموده و پیشنهادات را جهت جلوگیری و مبارزه با این پدیده در سطح ملی، منطقوی و بین المللی ارائه نموده است. توقع ما از وزارتخانه‌ها و ادارات مربوطه این است تا در این عرصه با هم همکاری نمایند. در قدم اول باید عوامل قاچاق و ترافیک انسان را شناسایی نمود، سپس همکاری و هماهنگی با ادارات و سازمان‌های بین‌المللی صورت بگیرد و در اخیر هم مکانیزم‌های مؤثر جهت جلوگیری و مبارزه با قاچاق و ترافیک انسان را ایجاد نماید. وزارت امور خارجه از تلاش تمام وزارت‌ها و ادارات دولتی و غیر دولتی جمهوری اسلامی افغانستان و سازمان‌های بین‌المللی به منظور کاهش قاچاق انسان سپاسگزاری نموده و از هر نوع برنامه‌ای برای آگاهی‌دهی، جلوگیری و مبارزه با قاچاق انسان حمایت خویش را اعلام می‌نماید. در اخیر یک بار دیگر از حضور گرم همه شما قدردانی کرده و آرزومندم تا بحث‌های خوب و مثمر را ظرف دو روز آینده داشته باشیم و به نمایندگی از وزارت امور خارجه یک بار دیگر وعده هر نوع همکاری و حمایت از تلاش‌ها و نتایج این جلسه را به شما ابراز می‌نمایم.
Assalamu alaikum and good morning, dear participants, dear friends. Ms. Ayan, thank you for and Ms. Riyazat, thank you for Mr. Riyazat, thank you for being here, for making space to your busy agendas and attending this important event. And I will say why it is important, and I think you have also alluded to it in your introductory speeches. I also want to thank all the Afghan authorities, the Ministry of Justice and other ministries who have been working with us side by side in this endeavor of fighting against trafficking. My name is Lawrence Hart. I'm the head of the IOM here in Afghanistan. I've been here for over 2.5 years. But in my previous incarnation, in my previous life, I was in Geneva and I was heading the anti-trafficking division, or division which had anti-trafficking as one of the key issues globally. So this particular activity has a specific space in my heart and mind, and I also want to join in welcoming friends and representatives coming from around the corner in Afghanistan, but also the other friends coming from Pakistan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan and Uzbekistan. This is a very valuable opportunity for all of us to listen to you as well, to learn from you, to understand also your suggestions, your lessons learned, what has worked, what hasn't worked. It's extremely important in these occasions not to reinvent the wheel. Not to reinvent the wheel. There are mechanisms, there are success stories, there are success models. Let's look at them. Let's capitalize on these. Let's see if they can be translated into a regional or a national context. Some of them might not be easy to translate or to make it possible to translate it into a national context. But others might be really useful. So I do not only welcome you, but I wish you a very fruitful discussion, exchange, a very open and frank one on this subject. It is important to bring together relevant actors from the various parts of the actors involved in this issue of anti-trafficking. And what I mean actors is, of course, you, civil society, representatives of the civil society, but also the government, especially from the Ministry of Justice, the judges and prosecutors, the law enforcement officials. Bring them together, create a synergy, knowledge, communication. This has been done. It's called, normally it's called National Referral Mechanism. And again, it's not in reinventing the wheel. They do exist. Some of them are more successful than others. And I think it's important to look into that as well. I have, you know, I'm sure you have a lot to say, but I was mentioning to Ms. Jan before we started, in Europe, the continent where I come from, there's a lot of trafficking according to data. If we look at the data for Asia, on the contrary, we see that trafficking is not such a big phenomenon. Does that mean that trafficking does not exist here and in Europe is a very large phenomenon? Actually, possibly quite the contrary. It's because some countries have decided to strengthen their monitoring mechanisms, their assistance mechanisms, and this phenomenon emerges. In other countries where the phenomenon seems to have very low numbers, possibly is because there is the mechanisms to facilitate the detection, the follow-up, the protection of people who are victims of trafficking don't necessarily exist. Hence the importance, I think, of this very important meeting. For example, in the European Union, they have established a person that is called Anti-Trafficking Coordinator. The Anti-Trafficking Coordinator speaks and coordinates the actions of 28 states in the European Union. It's extremely important to harmonize legislation, to look at common response mechanisms, to look at prevention, for example. It's extremely important. I could go on for a long time. This is I'm very passionate about this subject of anti-trafficking. But first I would also like to thank also my colleagues here who are in this room and others who are not in this room for facilitating, driving this program, not only this event, specifically this event, of course, but also this program ahead. And I also like to thank the support of the US towards in funding and supporting this activity. I would like also to remember today a young colleague of IOM. Her name is Fariha. She lost her life last month, less than a month ago in Jalalabad. She was 22 years old. She had a 6-year-old daughter, and she was already a widow because she had lost her husband in another complex attack. She was very determined, and she wasn't the only one determined. Her family, whom I met about 10 days ago, of course was really shattered. But the point why I'm bringing in the memory of this colleague is because each one of us is exposed, not only of course in Afghanistan, but trafficking is an issue that exposes us. So I commend your commitment. I do encourage you to continue, and I support all your efforts that you have in addressing this very important subject and this important issue. I think before ending my introduction, it's important, as I said, to look at templates, to look at how we can operationalize beyond the meeting. The meetings are important because they bring us together. They strengthen our knowledge and connections, but we need also to have a plan of action. And that is also important, to come up with clear indications of plan of actions which can attain some tangible results. I wish also to thank all the NGO partners. They have been mentioned: FRD, Salam Watandar Media, Bashwak, Afghan News, Hagar International, Samuel Hall, and Voice of Women organizations, who are partners in this endeavor. We also, was alluded to, I think we also have important milestones that we have reached, which is the development of a first trafficking person training manual for Afghanistan, which is whose translation will be translated very soon, and this manual was also tested, and a number of 2071 officials have been trained on this manual. One last word. Trafficking can take different forms. It can be an individual sort of trying to lure or make the rosy picture about going to work abroad or in another region, in another province. But it can be also very sophisticated and very organized. So trafficking can take up different forms. It can be 1-2 individuals facilitating trafficking, but it can be also real multinationals. I think of the many people whom I met, for example, in the construction sector, in the fishing sector, that have been exploited, for example, in several parts of the world. Why am I saying this? Because I think we have to be smart.